everybody. First of all, thanks for coming. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. If you don't know me, my name is Jay Pryor. It's my privilege and honor to be with you today. I want to start out, first of all, by acknowledging and appreciating you all for being here, because if you're here, that tells me that you have an interest in really creating success in your life by managing your mind. That's our topic today. And what I know is I've been coaching people in business for over 20 years, and there is only one key and one difference between somebody who's going to be successful versus somebody who is not. And that person who is successful is the person who can manage this mind up here. And so we're going to really dive into that today. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about me. Again, my name is Jay. I've been an executive coach for over 20 years. I've coached people to create businesses in their lives, wild romance in their lives, great trips, move across the country, all kinds of things. And it's just like the best job in the world to get to coach people to fulfill on their dreams. And so it is just a joy and a privilege to be with you. I live in Lawrence, Kansas, with my two kids and three dogs and my wife. And I get to do this for a living where I get to speak to people and lift them up. And my promise to you today, or my goal today, is that within this hour, I'm going to shift your consciousness enough. I only have an hour, but I'm going to shift your consciousness enough that within this next week, you're going to become aware of one of the limiting beliefs that you may be carrying around with you that you didn't even know you had. So that's my goal, and that's about me. The rest of this hour is all about you and your life. So I would love to have you hit in the chat anything that you might want to get out of today that you might be thinking, oh, I want to make sure we cover that. You might want to pop that in the chat. And I had put my email address in the chat. So I'll also be making sure to send you a copy of my audiobook at the end of this so that you have that. And all you have to do is email me to get a copy of that. And my email address is in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and hit me up in the chat, we'll look at some of the stuff that you want to get out today. And I will go ahead and jump right in. So one of the things that we know about human beings is that we are run by this thing called our mind, right? And we don't see your email yet. Okay. The email address was popped into the chat. Maybe Ellen could pop it back in. So that should be coming up in the chat. Sorry about that. Okay. So as I mentioned before, we're talking about managing your, there we go. We're talking about managing your mind. And there is a book that I refer to a lot when I'm talking about managing minds, and it's called The Attractor Factor by Joe Vitale. And in that book, Joe Vitale lists out the top 10 limiting beliefs of human being. So the first thing I want to do is talk about the anatomy of a belief. So a belief, essentially, what it boils down to is something that you have told yourself over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. We're all born into families that have different beliefs. You may have had a religious upbringing or a cultural upbringing that pretty much ground into you beliefs about all kinds of things. You can have beliefs about money. You can have beliefs about family. You can have beliefs about religion. All of those things are kind of baked into our culture and baked into our family. I know that for myself. I was raised, for example, in a big family. I'm the youngest of 9 kids, and we're a big Catholic family. So we have very specific, every week we go to church, family's the most important thing. Like those are some of the things that we were just ground into our beliefs about how life should go, that family should be the biggest focus in your life. And family is the most important thing, for example, is one of the values and one of the beliefs that we have in my family. So all of you, I'm sure, have beliefs that you just know that you have. The problem with beliefs are the ones we don't know we have, the ones that just kind of sneak in there. So when Vitale identifies the top 10 limiting beliefs of human beings, these are things that you have said over and over and over and over and over again to yourself that now have become something you believe about yourself. and you may not even know that you're doing it. So I want to back up for a second and talk about how do we, as human beings, form beliefs and create the life that we live all the time. So again, a belief is narrowed down to something you've told yourself over and over again. But usually for human beings, a belief is triggered by something that has happened in your life. So, for example, one of my favorite stories to talk about, because it was one of the biggest shifts I've ever seen in a human being almost immediately, is the day that I was talking to my friend, Nate. And Nate had been recently arrested. And those, since you're attorneys, you know this process. He had been recently let out of jail and he had assaulted a police officer. So I don't know about you, but just sometimes I have trouble not being blunt. And so I said, what the hell is wrong with you? Why on God's green earth would you ever assault a police officer? And here's what I want to, this is where I'm going to start raising your consciousness. I want you to listen very carefully to when people say, when I was little. Because right off the bat, and if you ask people, why do you do this particular thing? And right out of the mouths, people will say, well, when I was little or when I was a kid, this thing happened. So I'm talking to my friend Nate, and I say, why on God's green earth would you ever assault a police officer? And immediately he says, well, when I was little, I was about 7 years old. And on my way home from school, I got in a fight with a kid and he beat me up. And I came home and I was all beat up. And my dad whipped me. And he told me, don't you ever come home having lost a fight. He said, after that, he said, when I started fighting, I just see red and I don't even know. I kind of disappear. So I said to Nate, can you see? And this man was 47 years old at the time I'm talking to him. I said, can you see that at the age of 47 years old, your life is being run by a decision that a 7-year-old made? His mouth fell open. He said, I have been in anger management classes 3 different times. Court appointed, by the way. Anger management classes 3 different times. And no one has ever told me that before. Ever. And he got it to his bones in that moment that when he was 7 years old, he decided that if any kind of aggression stuff happened, he had to win that fight. It became for him somewhat of a survival technique. But every one of us, all human beings, have stories like Nate's, where something happened when we were a kid and we decided that we had to be a particular way. And then we went and gathered evidence that that thing must be true, and it became our capital T truth. And that, my friends, is how you, me, and all of the planet create the reality that we live in over and over again. Is we make a decision about how we need to be, or that something is a particular way, and then we go gather evidence for that decision, and then it's our truth. So you can decide that about almost anything. In office politics, in relationships. If I see somebody in the hallway before I'm going into work and I say hello to them and they don't say hello back to me in a way that has me feel validated and acknowledged, I can decide that that person doesn't like me. And then I can start acting and being like that person doesn't like me. And next thing you know, that person could be like, boy, Jay's being weird today. And then I could pick up on that and be like, see, now I have evidence. Now I have evidence and it's the truth. And then because I'm human, I would most likely go to another coworker and say, you know, that person doesn't like me, and we'll get agreement, and then we'll create agreement together. And then, then we have a bigger truth. So that is how we start telling ourselves these things over and over and over again. They become our reality. So Joe Vitale listed out the top 10 limiting beliefs of human beings. And I'm wondering if we could play a little Family Feud and or see if you know what any of those are. So if you're welcome to either hit in the chat or if you want to take yourselves off mute, what do you suppose out of the 10, if you can guess any of these, what do you suppose the top 10 limiting beliefs of human beings are? What would your thoughts? I'm not good enough. That's number one. Well done. Number one, I'm not good enough, right? Yeah, I'm not good enough. It runs most human beings. And it can come again, usually some incident happens where we fail in some way and we tell ourselves I'm not good enough. And then we tell ourselves over and over and over and over again, I'm not smart enough. Yeah, yeah. Or I'm not something enough, right? Oh, they don't like me. Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't think that's on the top 10, but it's close to I don't deserve love and happiness, which is, or I can't trust others. That's another one, right? So, any other thoughts on the top 10 limiting beliefs of human beings? The world isn't safe. That's for sure. Yeah. So, those are all, I think, on the list. Let me run through these for you. So, the number one is I'm not good enough. Number two is that money is evil or bad. Number three, success is only for others. Number four, I don't deserve love, happiness, whatever it is. Number five, change is hard. Number six, I don't have enough time. Now, I've worked with a lot of attorneys in my life. I happen to know that I don't have enough time comes out of every attorney's mouth I've ever worked with. So I'm guessing that you all resonate with that one pretty well. I don't have enough time. Number seven is I'm too old or I'm too young. Like I'm too something to be a success. Number eight is I need to be perfect to be successful. Number nine is I can't trust others. And number 10 is I'm a victim of my circumstance. So those are Vitali's top 10 limiting beliefs. Here's what I know about human beings is that either you have one of those top 10 or a variety of one of those as your, what I would call your sentence. So in my book is called Lean Inside, 7 Steps to Personal Power. And I am going to offer you a free copy of that book at the end of this. So all you have to do is email me and I'll send you a free audiobook, copy of the audiobook. But in my book, we talk about creating the notion of your sentence. So what I assert is that if you really listen to your self-talk, and I mean really listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth, you will tell yourself what your limiting belief is about you. So if you listen to yourself talk, you might hear yourself say, I'm not good enough for XYZ, or I'm terrible at this, that, and the other. I had a client come to me one time in the very first session. She said, I am terrible at relationships. And what she wanted to work on was relationships. And so right off the bat, right out of her mouth, she got to tell me this belief that she had about herself. And she had been gathering evidence because she had all these past relationships that had failed. So she had tons of evidence that she was bad at relationships. That became her capital T truth. Now, what I also know about human beings is when we have a capital T, when we're something we believe about ourselves and we're gathering evidence for it, it usually also keeps us safe in some way. It gives us an out. It gives us an excuse not to show up powerfully. It gives us an excuse to lay low or to, not stand out or to whatever it is, because that belief is there telling us all the time that either I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, all those things. But what I know is that every one of you has a limiting belief. We have so many of them as humans that we carry around with ourselves. And some of them, like we know that about ourselves and we've been working on it, or we can give that up about ourselves. And a lot of them are completely unconscious. They aren't things that you're present to in this now moment. They're not things that, I would be able to tell me if I said, hey, what are the limiting beliefs you have about yourself? You would go, I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. So in my seminars, and I don't have time to do this with you today, but in my seminars, and this is what I recommend for you as homework, is that you sit down with an area of your life. So if you were to pick any area of your life, and in my book, I focus on six, and these six areas, let me see if I can recite them, are um, relationships, finances, career, um, and sometimes career and creativity, because some people are just settled in their career, they're great at it, they're going fine, but they're like need to have a creative outlet, right? So relationships, finances, career, and creativity. Um, Environment is another one. Uh, Spirituality, and I'm missing one because I know there's six. But all those, so you think about like what areas of your life, of all of those, oh, health and well-being. That was no wonder I'm health and well-being. What area in your life would make the biggest impact on your life to have a shift in it? So some of you, and this is what I know from being a coach, when we coach people, one of the things that we know about human beings is we all define our own integrity. What that means is what's integrity for me is not the same as what's an integrity for you. So some of you, for example, may be people who have a high level of integrity when it comes to your physical well-being. You may be people who work out 5, 6 times a week, right? You eat healthy all the time. Like it's just not a big deal to you to have a lot of integrity around the way you eat, the way you take care of your body. Now, to be honest, I've never met an attorney that's good at that, but very few. um, um, and some of you may be terrible at that part, right? That's like the health and well-being is the hardest part for you to dial in. And you may be great at your finances, right? You may be awesome at that. You may be great in relationships, but most people have at least one area that it could be a game changer if you would up your game in that one area. So just for now, think about out of those top six places I just mentioned, which of those would be a game changer? Like it would just up your level if you had a shift in one of those areas. And what I can promise you is if it's an area where you're not as successful as you would like to be, because you might be successful in this area, but you're not as successful as you would like to be, then what I could promise you is that you are being run by a belief, a limiting belief that then gets in your way. And what I call that when we can figure out what the words are is your sentence. So you have sentenced yourself to this thing. It is a limit for you, but it is also a sentence. It's literally something that you say out loud, like, I'm terrible at relationships. Or like my friend Nate, when I fight to the death, I got to win because I got to win. Like that was one of his things he taught himself is I got to win. One of the things that comes up a lot in my coaching and in the seminars that I do is a belief that everything is on me. That if I don't take care of everything, and I work with a lot of executive women, if I don't take care of it, it's not going to get done. And that everything is on me. That's one of the beliefs that comes up. So what we do then is we take a dive into that area. So you could write that area, and this is your homework. You could write that area on a piece of paper and then just start writing. And do not stop yourself until you want to. But what I normally do is I just set a timer for 5 to 7 minutes. And I just write for 5 to 7 minutes. And whatever comes out of your pen is usually then stuff that you might be surprised by some of the things that you can see. And when you can catch yourself, when you can write down, oh, and then come back and see, oh, I've sentenced myself to a should, right? And I've been shoulding all over myself in this area, then you've got something to go with. So I want to address the word of should. Should is a great watchword, is what I call it. And in my book and in my work, I distinguish your small self, which is all the wiring that's run by yourself. And I understand you're having some emotional intelligence workshops, so you'll be familiar with this. And that's just your wiring, right? It's your amygdala that gets hijacked and your limbic system that takes you over, and your reticular activating system, which is the part of the brain that seeps down from your conscious to your subconscious mind. This mental uh, brain of yours is running the show most of the time. And in my book, I distinguish your small self, small brain, the part of you that reacts to everything, the part of you that gets hijacked, the part of you that, you know, has a tendency to focus on the things that are not working in your life. I call that your small. And the other part of you, your soul part, the part of you that's committed to success, the part of you that knows that you are good enough deep down inside, I call that your higher self. And so part of what happens when you're shoulding all over yourself, right? When there is a should there, is that you're actually arguing with reality. So when you're shoulding, you're actually arguing with reality. And what we know is that arguing with reality will make you crazy. So you have got to not do that if at all possible. Because what is happening, right? In that moment, and or whatever you're doing, you are doing. And when you think that you should not be doing something like that you are doing, then you're arguing with reality, and energetically you're creating resistance. Now, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I assert that everything is energy. I don't really care if you believe that, but if you practice it, what I can tell you is that it works every time to not resist, not push against, because what you push against comes at you stronger, but to give up resisting. And when you're shoulding, when you're saying, I shouldn't be doing this, or I should have had this already figured out by now, because that's another big belief. I should be doing something else. I should have had this figured out. When you're doing that, you're arguing with the reality that you're not doing those things and you're making yourself wrong, right? You're thinking I'm wrong for doing this, should be doing something else. Then you're creating resistance, which actually pushes against and makes things come at you stronger. And so I want to also put you on the hook to pay attention to every time you hear the word should come out of your mouth. Because when you can catch it, when you can catch that word should coming out of your mouth, if you stop and pay attention to what you're shoulding on yourself about, you will probably see a belief up under there that might be running you, and it might be that sentence that you have sentenced yourself to. And I'm not good enough. I should have had this already figured out by now, all of that stuff. So if you can stop that, then you could be mindful enough to put something else in its place. Now, affirmations have got a bad rap back in the 80s and 90s when they first came out, and Saturday Night Live had a great time with Jack Handy, who would look in the mirror and say, I'm smart enough, I'm good enough, and gosh darn it, people like me, right? And so, you know, that's same thing as like life coaching and all that kind of stuff could get a pretty bad rap around that, like it's just fairy tale stuff, which it is if you don't believe it. So in my book, what I assert is that we have to change a new conversation. Once we identify these beliefs, we have to start a new conversation for ourselves if we want to change that belief. So this whole time that you've had this belief that you're not good enough, that you're not smart enough, that people don't like you, that whatever that is, you've been gathering evidence for that. So when I work one-on-one with clients, for example, once we distinguish that belief, we create something else for them to believe, but it has to be something you actually believe. You can't, for example, hate your own guts and then step in front of a mirror and say, I love myself, and not have your, what I call your BS meter, your belief system meter, go off. The BS meter will go off in a heartbeat. And so to start saying affirmations that you don't believe is a waste of time as far as I'm concerned. And that's why affirmations don't work. And everything that has ever existed throughout time started with a conversation. Everything. There's nothing on this planet that started as an idea. It starts as an idea, but somebody had to speak it into existence. So if you think about Starbucks, and I'm way old enough to remember before there was one, at some point, somebody in Seattle said to somebody else, hey, do you think people would pay $5 for a cup of coffee? And they started looking around, and sure enough, there's plenty of people who'd pay $5 for a cup of coffee. And next thing you know, we have a Starbucks all over the world on every corner. But that did not exist before that conversation. And so, what has to happen for you to transform a belief? One of the first steps is we have to create a conversation, what I would call a conversation for possibility, a new conversation. This can show up as an affirmation, which is great. You can start to say things like, I am confident. If you believe I'm confident, you're confident. And if you don't, you want to start saying things like, I'm starting to be confident. I'm willing to be confident. And then we have to start doing things like putting yourself on the hook to like go do something that scares you to start to prove to yourself, and you can start gathering evidence of this new thing that you've decided to create for your life on purpose. So see how human beings create their lives is they have beliefs and they go to gather evidence for those beliefs, and those beliefs become their truth. And that truth then is something they work on because they put it in action and they do things to make that thing real. And so all we have to do to create what we really, really want in the world is be conscious about creating a belief, a new belief, like it's possible for me to bring on several new clients this year. It's possible for you to break all of your goals in your finances. It's possible for you to find new love in your life if that's something you want. It's possible for you to get your body into the shape that you want if that's what you want. All of that's possible the minute that you're willing to believe it. Henry Ford said, if you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, you can't. I mean, that sounds so dumb and simple sometimes that it makes me angry. And it's so true because it really is about what do you believe about yourself and how willing and able are you to manage your mind. So the managing of the mind is so important because when this thing is, I mean, human beings most of the time are either in connection mode, which we are willing to connect with other people, we're willing to engage with other people, we're willing to be vulnerable with other people, or we are in protection mode, which means we're going to be putting our hand out and making sure we're safe and we're focusing on our own safety and all of that. And the little monkey mind up here, its job, your amygdala's job is to be able to look out for threat all the time. It's always doing that. It's always on the lookout for threat. And because of that, boy, can it get going down a negative direction. And depending on how well you're managing your cortisol, if your cortisol is high, I can guarantee you that having your cortisol high and your monkey mind starts going and starts chatting on with you about different things like that, that is a symptom that your cortisol is high. And so if you're not managing your cortisol, keeping that low, then that thing will talk at you all day long and it will scare the living daylights out of you. And it's insanity. But as human beings, the craziest part is that we give it airtime. It's called worry. Human beings worry, and worry is imagining scary things that scare you on purpose. It's what? Why would we do that to ourselves? Good question. I have no idea why we do that to ourselves. And yet, human beings do it to ourselves all the time. Some people sit and stew and worry, like they pointedly do that. And what we know is that worry spikes your cortisol and gives your brain more to feed on. And so part of the tools of keeping yourself conscious is number one, being willing to practice, and I mean practice, like really pay attention to the words that are coming out of your mouth and the thoughts that you think. Meditation is powerful for this, but what's even more powerful is to start giving yourself time every day to just let it go and watch and observe your thoughts without judgment. See, what human beings do is we have a tendency to think a thought and then judge ourselves for the thought. It's a thought. Like, that's all that's happening is it's a synapse in our brain and it's just a thought. And what we do as humans is we have a tendency to say, oh, I'm good because I'm having these thoughts, or I'm a bad person for having these thoughts. And so the very first practice to become someone who is a master at managing your mind and therefore creating your own power, your own reality, is to be someone who is willing to take some time, a little time every day, even if you just take 5 minutes. Take 3 to sit and watch your thoughts without judgment, to just be with your thoughts without judging them as good or bad. When I'm coaching folks, one of the things I request out of you is to give up the words right, wrong, good, and bad. And instead of right, wrong, good, and bad, which I know you live in the world of law, so you have the world of law. And, in our culture, it tells you if you break the law that you're bad. And are you? That's a good question. If we give up the words right, wrong, good, and bad, breaking the law is unworkable. So we can give up right, wrong, good, and bad and take on, is it workable or is it not workable? And I could take any situation. I'm telling you, I have had so many situations over the last 20 plus years of coaching folks that we will look at a situation that when people tell me about it, I think, oh gosh, that is bad. Oh no, that's really bad. But then if I pick up that situation, I put it in the framework of, is that workable or is it unworkable? Wow. I mean, it shifts everything because, yeah, things that we would say are bad are probably unworkable. And the word unworkable gives us a place to move from. If something's unworkable, I can move towards workability. If something is good or bad, I'm just frozen there in good or bad. And it's a judgment. And inside a judgment, there's no possibility. So judgment kills off possibility. Another reason to start looking at your thoughts as just thoughts. That's all they are, thoughts. They're not right thoughts. They're not wrong thoughts. And when we look at situations as, are they workable? Is this workable? But judging yourself for having thoughts only puts on that more negative energy, more piling on of making yourself wrong and creating resistance. Because again, we don't want to create resistance. We want to focus on what's working. The reality is what we focus on always expands. That's due in part to your reticular activating system, which again is the gateway between the conscious and the subconscious mind. But what we focus on always expands. So we want to make sure that we're focusing on what's working in our lives so that will get bigger no matter what. I can guarantee you that if you're focusing on what's not working, that's getting bigger. So we got to be willing to shift into focusing on what is working in our lives, what's good in our lives, to make sure that expands. But so taking a few minutes to just notice, be the observer of your thoughts without judgment is really powerful. And what's going to happen if you take the time to do that, I can promise you what's going to happen if you pay attention to how many times you say should, and if you pay attention to the thoughts that you think, you're going to start to hear yourself say what you believe about yourself. Flying right out of your mouth, it's going to say something like, I can't ever have anything new, or something like that, right? Who knows what it is? But if you really listen, I promise that you will become more masterful at your own thoughts and then more masterful of your own success, because you can really catch yourself thinking things that sabotage your success and that you believe, things that you believe about yourself that sabotage your success. The other tool, and this is going to sound corny, but it's true, is to really create a practice of gratitude. Now, again, like I said, I know that sounds corny. However, we are talking about your reticular activating system. So the reticular activating system, again, gateway between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. So the reality is when you're not looking, that's what comes up in your conscious mind is what you've been feeding it in your subconscious mind. This is why for all my clients right now, I recommend a very news light diet. Find a neutral, trusted source of news and engage with it for about 5 minutes a day, and that's it. You will still know what's going on. You don't have to read the article about this one thing that's happened by 7 different journalists to know what happened. You'll still know what happened. But there's a really, really powerful tool of being able to take in the news and not just roll around in the stank of it. As human beings, we have a tendency to want to roll around in stuff that raises our cortisol because it gives us that cortisol rush. And the cortisol crash after a rush like that is not worth it. So managing your cortisol is one of the most important things you can do as a human being. And when you create a gratitude practice, and I don't care how you do it, but what you're focusing on are things that are working and being grateful for. And if you make your mind think of new things every day to be grateful for, then what you're putting into your mind is good stuff. So when you're not looking, good stuff's popping up. Because now, or whatever you're feeding your mind, say you're feeding yourself a lot of negativity, you're feeding yourself a lot of fear, you're feeding yourself whatever it is, right? Then when you're not looking, that's what's going to run the day. I promise. And that is going to continue to raise your cortisol, which continues the cycle all over again. So the mindfulness practices of watching your thoughts and watching your mouth, I tell you, there's no more powerful practice than watching your thoughts and watching your mouth. There just isn't. And it's a difficult thing to say, this is something that's a tool, but it is. It's a great tool to be able to really catch yourself because most human beings are unconscious about what they say and what they think, like 98% of the time. Well, maybe 97. 3% of the times, from what I understand, is when we're conscious of what's really we're speaking and we're present in the moment. 97% of the time, human beings, completely unconscious about what we're thinking and what is running us every day. And what's running you every day is this thing. So if you want to be successful in your life and in business, we have to manage the mind. And the best tool for that is paying keen attention to what you say, the words that come out of your mouth, and what you think, the thoughts you think. Now, I also recommend that you get a trusted friend that will call you out or call you in when you catch yourself or when they catch you saying things that are not true about yourself or you don't want to be true about yourself. So I personally surround myself with friends who have a lot of beliefs that our words are powerful and what we speak about ourselves and how we think about ourselves is so important. And so my friends will catch me if I say something like, I'm not good at, managing my money. And they'll say, up until now, because we never want to affirm that that's how we are. One of the things that I think is so important for us to understand as humans is the only way people know you is how you talk about yourself. The only way people know your profession is how you talk about it. The only way people know about where you work is how you talk about it. The only way that people know about your spouse, about your children, about the people in your life is how you talk about it. That's how they know you. And so what I want for you as your coach in this moment is for you to speak about yourself powerfully so that when people leave you, their impression of you, your spouse, your job, your life is, oh, there's a powerful person. I know that many of you know people who, when they speak or post on Facebook, you leave and you are concerned about that person, right? You have a worry about that person because of how they speak about their life or how they post on Facebook, how they present themselves. And so part of being successful as a human being is to make sure that you're managing your mind enough and being conscious enough that the words that are coming out of your mouth only reflect a you that is powerful, successful, capable, able, all those things that you want to put out to the world. And if your mouth, the words that you're speaking, does not match that, then it's on you, right, to start taking steps to flip the script on that. And most humans, especially those people that talk in a way that have us concerned about them, do not there's like a disconnect. It's so interesting, the disconnect that human beings have between the words that are coming out of their mouth and the way people perceive them. So if you're speaking in a way that has me concerned about you, then I I feel like you probably have a loss of power. You may not be somebody I want to hire as my attorney. And people don't understand that the way that they speak about themselves really does leave an impression. So you becoming conscious and becoming a master at managing your thoughts and managing the words that are coming out of your mouth, that's a goal and it's a practice. And what I hope is in the next few minutes, that already in this hour, you have a higher level of consciousness now that we've had this conversation. So at least for the next few days, and what I tell people all the time is you will go unconscious in about 3 days. This 1 hour will impact you if you're willing to take it on. And it has to be on you. There really is, with personal development, it is the strangest thing, but it's just like everything else. You have to practice to stay good at it. So I know lots of, and just like everything else, when you start it, it's awkward. So if you're a musician, for example, and you may have been playing for years, but if you remember the first time you picked up that instrument, the first time you sat down at that piano, you weren't a master at that instrument by any stretch. And it's fascinating that people can understand that with athletics and music, things like that. Everyone understands you got to practice. You got to keep sitting down with that instrument and practicing. Even if you've gotten to be really good at it, if you don't do it for a while, you will be rusty. Like that's all there is to it. Same thing with athletics. Those of you who may be athletes, you understand that you can't just expect yourself, like if you're in tip-top shape and you can do all kinds of things, you can do 50 push-ups, you could, run a marathon. If you haven't done that in over a year, you haven't worked out in over a year, you haven't worked out in a couple of months. I mean, I can just go a month, 3 weeks without working out. And man, am I going to be sore the next time I do. Personal development and managing your own success is just like that. You have to be willing to put in the time, and it's not a ton of time. You can do 10 minutes a day. There is something called the power hour, which Jack Canfield speaks about in his book, The Success Principles, which I highly recommend for everyone. It's by Jack Canfield. It's called The Success Principles. And there's a lot of great stuff in that book. One of the things he talks about is a power hour. And there's a lot of people that talk about this getting up at 5 a.m. to do the power hour. But the bottom line of the power hour is it's 20 minutes of exercise for your physical body, 20 minutes of meditation or mindfulness practices for your spiritual and mental state, and then 20 minutes of reading something in your field that's on the leading edge of your field. And by doing that power hour, really elevates you in your field, elevates you in your body, like elevates you on every level. And it's something that you would have to put in your calendar and do the work for. As a coach, one of the things that I get to do is hold people accountable to be that person, right? Just like a personal trainer, I don't know if any of you have ever worked with a personal trainer, but I'm better at doing things like lifting weights or anything physical because I'm not. I am better when I have somebody waiting on me, right? Or if I'm paying someone. So as a coach, part of what I get to do is hold people accountable to put in the work of their own personal development, their own wellness, so that they become people who, when they're speaking, thinking, their words and their thoughts match the success and possibility that they want to create in their lives. So that is all I have for you today. And like I said, my book is called Lean Inside, 7 Steps to Personal Power. If you would like a copy of my book on audio, I will send it to you for free as a gift for being here today. And all you have to do, I had put my email in the chat once, but it is the word Jay spelled out, at JAYPRYOR coaching.com. J@jpryorcoaching.com. If you would like a copy of my audiobook, or if you're interested in coaching or any other, like to talk about anything at all, please feel free to email me. But if you email me, I'll make sure you get a copy of that audiobook. I will leave you with the notion that managing your mind does take a little work, right? It takes practice. And what I know as a coach and watching people be successful is that when you take the time to gift yourself the notion of your thoughts are thoughts and you're not right, wrong, good, or bad for having a thought, when you can be that conscious, you start to really pay attention, you're going to start to notice that you have put limits on yourself. And that as human beings that are successful, when we can get out of our own way, when we can reduce our own limits, then that is when we start to thrive. There's a quote by Anais Nin that I love that I'll leave you with that says, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud became more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And what I believe is that every human being gets to that point where it's like we want to expand, we want to blossom, we want to thrive. And usually the thing that's in our way is us. So I will leave that there and have just a few minutes for questions, thoughts from any of you who are here. And thank you for taking the time to be with me today.
Jay, I don't see any questions from the room, but on behalf of KLAP, thank you so much for coming and being with us for Wellbeing in the Law Week. We
Yeah.
really appreciate your expertise, and I know that you've worked with a lot of attorneys over the years. So sharing this knowledge with our group is really invaluable to us, and we would just really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. I'm happy to do it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Does anybody else have questions before we log off? Okay, well, this is the midpoint of Wellbeing in the Law Week. We hope you can join us for the remaining events on Thursday and Friday. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
Thank you.